At the age of 4, I announced to my parents that I was going to be a novelist. And my father said, "Isn't it a few years too early?" I said, "Well, I'm picking up material now." So I always was going to be a writer, I knew it. And when I went to school, you know, and they had the fire prevention contest and stuff like that, I'd win first prize. And then I surprised my teachers. We had to write an autobiography of a thing. I'm a rubber tire, I'm a pair of scissors, and tell it from a first person point of view. Guess what I wrote about? I am Don Quixote's helmet. Wow, that wowed her. So she called up my parents and said she wanted to see them. I was in about the 8th grade. So my mother cooked up some cookies and stuff like that and made tea, and my father stayed home. And my father said, "You better come, it's all about you, I don't know what the devil you did," he said, "but it must be awful." And she came and she said, "I want to tell you, your son is a natural writer. I wouldn't try to turn him into anything else." Isn't that wonderful of a teacher? I remember her name is Bronson. And not only that, but she got me a card in the adult library so I could read the kind of books that I was up to.
Did she ever know of your career? She must have known that you became a great writer.
She wrote me a letter and said, "I see I wasn't wrong." And I wrote back and said, "Never." And thank you.
In the words of a great writer, never.
Yeah. Thank you, I said.
Did you write for a school paper or?
A school paper, and I remember there was a physics teacher by the name of Dr. Stenson, and I was building an object to measure the laws of friction as something rolled down as part of some project there. And he came to me, he read something I wrote in the school paper. "You had Polonsky?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Have you ever read Ruskin?" I said, "Not yet." He said, "Well, read him, it'll help you." That's what they told Proust too, you know. But Proust turned out a little better. Then I went to City College because we couldn't afford to send me anyplace else. And over there I wrote on the newspaper, and I became part of a literary group called Cleonia, which consisted of Paul Goodman, Polonsky, Leonard Boudin, who became a great lawyer, William Christopher Barrett of Boston. That was quite a group, huh? Mm-hmm. And we all thought we were the tops of the universe. We had a very high opinion of ourselves. And when I was graduated from City College, they appointed me to the faculty as a teacher and said, "If you take a PhD, you can become a professor." But of course, I didn't take a PhD. I didn't do anything. And finally, I went to Columbia Law School, which would not help me become a PhD. But I want to tell you that I've received an honorary degree, Doctor of Humane Letters.
Congratulations.
Damn right.
That's quite an honor.
But no, that's not the point. The point is I got this, in addition to my hat and all the other crap I have, I got this colored thing I have to wear now. That makes me a doctor. My daughter now writes letters, Dr. Polonsky. She's terrible.
What made you go to law school?
My father said, quoting Spinoza, my father said, "Writers are philosophers fundamentally, if they're any good. I assume you will be good. Therefore, you'll be a philosopher. According to Spinoza, you got to have a trade. You can't make a living as a writer or a philosopher. So pick a trade." I said, "What one?" "I'm not going to medical school," I said. He said, "That's all right." So I went to Columbia Law School. And I graduated, and I got a job in the law office, and a great historical event took place. One of the clients of the law office, I mean a relative of chief partner, wrote a show, one of those daily shows on radio that go on every day, you know, for 15 minutes in those days. and her name was Gertrude Berg, and the show was The Goldbergs. It was written with a sort of Jewish accent, you see. But she was really very talented because she wrote, produced, directed, and acted in it. And later on, she wrote some plays, so she was good. And so one day down at the law office, I get a call from the senior partner to please come in, and I come to the office, and there's this slightly plumpish, nice-looking, very smart woman who speaks perfect English, of course, and he introduces her to me as Gertrude Berg. And I never heard of a program, of course. Why would I? And he said, she's going to do a show which involves a law case. And there she wants to know about get the right expressions and so on. So I've selected you. Will you please help her out? And she came to my office, and we sat down, and I started explaining the laws of evidence and all that kind of stuff. And her eyes blanked over, of course. And then, but she doesn't know I'm a writer. So finally I say to her, listen, what's the story you want to tell? Which is not a lawyer talking, right? And she tells me, I said, what's the first episode, I mean? And she tells me. I said, I'm going to dictate it. And the law is going to be correct. Just change the dialogue to fit your style, because I don't know your style. I never saw your show. And I did that. And the next day I received a check for $50. And I want to tell you, $50 in 1935 was more than I was making teaching at City College and working in the law office. Of course, my main income in the law was stealing the stamp money, you see. So, see, I'm lowest on the totem pole there, right? And my poor wife, who I had married by then, or had married me by then, actually, she was working at Macy's in the clerical department of something. So when Mrs. Berg hired me and paid me $250 a week, which was like giving someone $1 million a week in those days, since a man who made $25 could support a family on it. That's way back when money was very valuable. I called my wife up at Macy. I said, a miracle has occurred. She said, well, I said, I'm making $250 a week. So you don't have to work at the end of the week. You can quit. She says, what do you mean the end of the week? I'll be down in 10 minutes. And she never worked again.
That is great. And that was your start? That's how you got in?
Yeah. And then Mrs. Berg, in those days, there was a male Shirley Temple. Since there was a lady Shirley Temple, there was a male one, a kid with a beautiful voice. His name is Bobby Breen. So she was hired to write a screenplay for Bobby Breen, but she didn't know how to write a screenplay. I could learn faster than she could learn, see? So I helped her write the screenplay. So we went back to, my wife was with me out there. That's when I met Paul Jericho, 1937. And when we came back to New York, she said, what do you bother go to that law office for? Why don't you work for me? I said, yeah, but I'm a lawyer. She said, you're a very good writer. She told me. And she said, so if you work for me, I'll pay you $500 a week, every week guaranteed. If we sell another show, I'll cut you in. Well, it was like saying, I'll take you to Alaska and show you a gold mine, see? So I said, I have to sell out all my principles for that. I said, because I'm writing a novel that I don't understand. And she said, well, this will lead you to a more simple life. But anyhow, I did that. And ever since then, I made a lot of money, no matter what happened. After the war started, I tried to get into although I had a child, I tried to get in all the services, and I was turned down because I can't see with my glasses off. And a soldier who can't see with his glasses off is a dead man. I could see now, but of course now there's been an operation, you know. So in those days I couldn't, so they turned me down for everything. Well, my brother came to see me in New York, and he was a lieutenant in the 82nd Airborne Division, a paratrooper, my younger brother. And I complained to him bitterly. He said, well, let me tell you about something. It's called the OSS. And he tells me all about this. I said, what are you doing with it? I thought you were a paratrooper. He said, we're preparing for a jump into Yugoslavia. I said, you're preparing for a jump into Yugoslavia? The British jumped in last week. He says, so they'll move over. In any event, he says, they'll be interested in having you. Because with your radical background, you can work with the French underground. I said, that's great. I said, how about talking French? He said, you're not very good at that, but it's good enough. And so I took all the tests, and they examined me, and I was examined by everybody. But I told them the truth about all my radical things, and they accepted me. Then I went to Washington and took the test and came out very high up on the test there, so naturally. And so they put me in training. Showed me how to blow up bridges, use all the different weapons of the different forces, our side, the enemy side, and so on. So one day, the commander where I was in training said, they want to see you in Washington. So I go to Washington, I meet the general in charge, and he says, we're getting demands constantly. They want you in England right now. And I said to myself, but not to him, why could they want me? I don't know anything. Why would they want me there, right? But that's what he said. So he said, go to New York, tell your wife, and then go down to Brooklyn Navy Yard and see Commodore Simpson. So I did all those things. My wife never objected. I think she was glad to get rid of me. But in any event, I went to the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and the guy writes something on a piece of paper. He says, memorize that. What's a pier number and a date? And he burns it. I'm an OSS kid, right? We get to London, and there's a military car with a driver, and we get in. We drive to Grosvenor Square, go into the embassy, and in the embassy, they're waiting for me. And I'm sworn in as a member of the embassy, because I'm a civilian. Because following my brother's advice, when they offered me a military rank, I turned it down and said, I'll be a civilian. He says, when you're a civilian, you can quit if you don't want to do it. If you get into the army, you got to do it. Well, he was in, so he knew. So, all right, so they swear me in. They say, around the corner is the headquarters of the OSS on Brook Street. I go there. They're waiting for me. Everybody's waiting for me wherever I go. The war depends on me, right? So I go upstairs. I go into a room. There's a colonel, a major, a couple of privates. Polonsky, are we glad you're here? That's hot about that greeting, huh? I said, good. What am I supposed to do? He says, well, since you're an expert in the philology of the German language. That's his first sentence, and I stopped. I said, wait a minute. I know Latin. I studied archaic Greek. I can get around in French, but I don't know a single word in German. How about Jewish? I said. They had made a mistake. They had my record mixed up with someone else. But there I am in England. So they're busy looking for this other guy who's still in the United States. And finally I said, well, what am I supposed to do now? Shall I go back to the United States? And without looking around, he said, stick 'em with the British. Don't even look at me. And 24 hours later, I'm part of the British Secret Services, where they trained me in black radio operations. The French Second Armored Division was assigned by Eisenhower to liberate Paris. Well, the German general in charge of Paris has already given up, you see. So the people are starting to get in the street. The cops have revolted, you know, it's all going on. We had to seize the place on the outskirts, about 18 miles outside of Paris, which was the headquarters for broadcasting and all the machinery and stuff. So they assigned me. They assume that you know something, you see. They assigned me, they said, go up there and take it over. So he said, well, who's there? He said, some Germans. I said, well, what am I supposed to do with the Germans? He said, there'll be a FFI group there. They'll help you. Force Française d'Intérieur, the underground, see? Well, I arrive up that place, and guess who the French Forces of the Interior are? Two 14-year-old boys armed with German machine pistols and grenades, and two 16-year-old girls armed with the same. They're going to help us take the... Well, if there's real troops in there, we'll get murdered, right? Whereupon the radio man with me, who they sent with me, says, don't shoot around the place, because if you knock out any of the machinery, we can't get any more, and you're off the air. So I said, well, how do we get in? And they said, well, we don't know. And Polonsky is smart. He says, this is the OSS. They got this fucked up. There must be an easy way to do it. So I go up to the door and I knock on the door. And it's open, and there's a guy with a gun, but he's an old man, an old German technician, a sergeant. I said, we're the Americans. We've come to take over this station. Oh, he says, thank God, we've kept the machinery in very good condition. And he had, everything's in perfect condition. The radio man goes through, he said, I never saw any stuff like this. So I say to this, there's another German there with him, I said, hey, what can we'd like to do you a favor. We're only 23 miles from the German front line. I said, would you like us to take you to the Germans and we'll drop you off? Oh, not right with them, but you know, on the outskirts. He says, no, I want to be a prisoner in the United States. I said, well, we'll do the best we can to get it for you. So that's how we took it over.
Did he really say that?
Yeah. Not only that, but when I came there to show Willie Boy to France, there was the French government put on a big show, you know, culture and all that kind of crap. And everybody was there all dressed up and everything like that. As I was waiting to go, a driver with a limousine arrived to take me there, and the leading actress. And as I got in the car, it starts to drive along, the driver says to me in French, don't you recognize me? And I look. He says, I was one of the kids with you. And that's why I got myself assigned to this. I wanted to say hello.
One of the kids that were in the FFI, or the...
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So we met again. I went to his house. I met his family and everything and stuff like that. And I tell you, it was a great war. Well, I came back to the United States, and they want to send me to work with Chiang Kai-shek to do the same job for him that I did for de Gaulle in the underground. So, but I'm against Chiang Kai-shek. I'm for the Reds, right? So I said, I don't want to go. He said, you have no choice. I said, yes, I do. I'm a civilian. And my brother was right. And I said, it was nice to know you. And I went out to Paramount and my family. And that's how I got in the movies. My friend Arnold Manoff, who was one of the three in writing in New York on the You Are There series. There was Manoff, Bernstein, and myself. Manoff was working for John Garfield, and he'd been working on a boxing story for him. But it was mixed up with the life of Barney Ross. And Barney Ross was the middleweight champion, but a hero in the war. But when he came back, he was on drugs. And the Hayes office would not let him make a picture about it. So while he was battling there, nothing ever happened. So Manoff quit and got a job at Paramount. And Manoff came into Paramount and said, how you doing here, Polonsky? I said, you can't get any pictures made this place. It's stupid. I'm going home. So he said, wait a minute. Could you do a boxing picture? I said, about what? He says, who knows? I said, yes. So he calls up Garfield at Enterprise, which is 2 blocks away. I said, I'm just talking to Polonsky. He's got a hell of a boxing story. So we walk over to Enterprise, and I get introduced to Garfield, who I had met several times before. And he's sitting there with his partner, Roberts, and a few other people, and they're ready to hear the great boxing story. So I make one up, right? That's Body and Soul. I made it up right there, more or less the way it is, and they're thrilled. And they said, sit down. We're calling a meeting with the head of the studio and everybody, because that was a studio full of stars, Enterprise, you know. Ginger Rogers was there and all those kind of people. And now I'm working on a story by myself. We go to meet in the head office of the president, who's Arthur B. Lowe Jr., and we meet in his office, and everybody's there. Production, decoration, everything, to hear the great new boxing story. So I tell it to them, and they're enchanted. What can I say? So they're enchanted by the story, and then they tell me I did this. You finished? And everybody said, wonderful. Whereupon I went to the door and started to leave. And Einfeld said, Polonsky, where are you going? We want you to write this story. I said, I'm under contract to Paramount. You have to find a writer. And I left. Now, it's 2 blocks away, right? As I come through the gate to my office, on my way to my office at Paramount, the guy on guard says, Mr. Polonsky, they want you in the front office. So I go to the front office, and there I meet the head of the studio, the guy by the name of Ginsberg or something at that time. And he says, we just lent you to the other studio for $2,000 a week. That's top salary out in the coast at that time. I said, great. He said, but you don't get that. He says, you get the salary under contract to us. We get the profit. I said, then you get another writer, because I'm not going. So we negotiated, and I got most of the money that way. And later on, I got it all. But the point about the fact is that I just turned around and left. And I was now working for Garfield.
Bucking the studio system, though, that's quite a good story.
I knew if you don't take a position, they kick you around. And the job is no good if I can't get the money.
Now,
I'm going to work for them. What am I, a slave?
Yeah.
I'm a genius.
You got an Oscar nomination for
Yes.
Body and Soul.
Guess which one?
Oh, gee.
Well, they told me, don't come, because I was invited to come to the show. I said, why? He says, because it'll go to a major studio, not that little studio like that, because they vote in studios in those days. Everybody who is a member of the Academy, if he's at Universal, votes for Universal Pictures. And the picture they voted for was The Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer. But my picture became a big hit. And I went to my first Hollywood party. My wife dressed up, and I dressed up, and we went there. We came home, and she said, never again. I said, why? She says, all they do is talk about themselves, and who cares? I never went again.
Really?
Never.
Now, Garfield saw you in Body and Soul. I mean, liked your writing, and didn't that lead to
Yeah,
your
well, he
directing
told
debut?
me. He said, you want to direct? I said, I never directed that. I never even went to summer camp, I said. I don't know how to direct. He said, you think you could? I said, well, I went all through this picture, and I've learned as much as I could about it. I got some new ideas how to do this thing. He said, well, if it's a melodrama, no one can question me. I said, well, I know a story about the numbers racket, and that was Tucker's People.
Ah, right.
You see?
Yeah.
So I went out. He said, well, go buy it. So I called up the guy who wrote it, went to New York. I bought it, brought him out, and we changed it so it fitted my picture, my idea for my picture.
Now, what's the great quote from Body and Soul?
Oh, the great quote from Body and Soul is, what are you going to do, kill me? Everybody dies. That's a great quote. I've had a waiter waiting on me at Warner's once, and he walked around this. He was hanging around the table all the time. Finally, someone spilled some coffee. He said, I've been waiting for that. And he cleans it off, he says. That's the way it is, you know, everybody dies.
just waiting for his cue.
What a world. This is a nutty profession, you know.
I love your other one. It's all profit and loss.
Yeah, the rest is conversation.
That's a great line.
What do you mean? It's the truth. Yeah, that's the scene where, in Body and Soul, where Roberts, the guy we use his real name, you know, for the gangster head, he meets Ben, the black guy, and Ben is a wreck, but he's working for Garfield now, and he throws some money to him on the floor, and the black guy refuses to pick it up, and the gangster walks away, and Garfield picks it up. He says, "Take it, Ben. It's only money. Money has no memory. It has no brains." Oh no.
That's great. That's great. I know you referred to it earlier, but how tough was it writing with the Hays Code?
Oh, very tough. They interfered in everything. Like in my picture, they wanted a statement at the end saying that he's going to work with the law. So I phrase it in such a way that it's for revenge, but he says something about helping get rid of Tucker.
But don't you think the audience got it, though?
Who cares? It's only a movie.
But your movies had messages.
My movies have no messages.
Really?
They have aspects of existence that make you think you're hearing the truth about something.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That's not ridiculous, it's style.
No, yeah, you're... Would you consider most of your films film noir?
That's so they say.
If you have to categorize, I'm sure.
Call them film noir. What do I care? The French like them better if they call them film noir. They understand film noir. I can get it for your wholesale. So what happened was the producer later became the head of MGM, I think. The producer was working for Darryl. And when he bought this book. Then Darryl read the book and called him and said, "Are you crazy? You think I'm going to make an anti-Semitic story? Because it's all about these crooked Jews, right? In the garment industry." So he said, "Well, let's get Jerome Weidman in." He gets Jerome Weidman. They say, "Jerome Weidman, your book is anti-Semitic." Weidman says, "Go fuck yourself." He's got paid already, right? You make it into a woman. I don't care what you do with it. I don't know how making it to a woman changes it, but that was an idea. So they brought it to me. "If you make it into a woman, can you change it?" I said, "Certainly, we make it on the woman question." That's what it's all about. So she's not even Jewish, but it doesn't matter. The Jewish guy in the thing is the Sam, what's his name, that old man, and he makes profound philosophical remarks all along, but it's really about the woman question. After all, this guy who goes out and makes all these deals, he's having affairs with every woman he meets. The woman who's now in charge because it's her thing, she's going out having affairs with every man she meets, and he's upset by that because he loves her. She says, "Why is it good for you and not for me?" is the point of thing. And she says, "If it's good for you, it's good for me." My conference with Zanuck was marvelous. He read my script, he liked it, but there was 4 scenes he didn't like. So Zanuck says, "I'd like to discuss it with you, Abe." I said, "Go ahead." So we sit there, and he mentions one scene. I said, "Well, I can change that." He mentions the next scene. I said, "No, that has to be in." And Zanuck says, "Yeah, but that scene," I said, "Zanuck, that has to be in. Let's go on." We go on, and so 2 of the ones I said I can change, and 2 I refused to change. He accepted them. If you stand up to him, and he likes what you're doing, he's willing to take it. They're all like that. Harry Cohn was that way, even Louis B. Mayer. You have to fight for your screenplays.
Of all the things, I mean, when you look at the scripts or the pieces from You Are There, and the things that you tackled, I mean, those are, like I said, you would have to be a scholar, a philosopher. You would have to have a good understanding historically.
Well, we met every day, the 3 of us. We discussed the stuff with each other. When I was sick, I had to go to the hospital, I had a hemorrhage. turned out to be from too much aspirin, but I only found that out later on. But anyhow, so my friends, I had a screenplay, you were there to write, they wrote it. They handed it in, and they gave me the money. There was no question about it. That's mine. So we treated everything the same way. Our time was available to each other.
You covered each other, basically.
Yeah. And we all met every day. We had lunch together, and we talked about the things.
Who decided on the events? Did you all come together with, I think we should do this event?
Well, what happened was, it would be a list of suggestions from the studio, and they would all be about stupid subjects. Then we would meet and decide that any of those savable. If there was one savable, we'd save one from there. Now, we'd turn around to each other. What do you think we should do? And Arnie Manifold said, I was always interested in Socrates. I say, Arnie, who are you kidding? You're not interested in Socrates. He said, I mean his wife, his relationship to his wife, because he always had trouble with his wives. So I said, great, that's a good idea. He wrote a very good script. It's about Socrates' philosophy, too.
So you would decide on the event. The studio let you have full run of.
And then we had full control over everything. That's the way that show was run. Charlie just made it happen. Russell.
Charlie Russell.
He had no politics. He just asked that one question.
What did he ask you?
Well, we're walking along in the street, as I'll tell it. We're walking along the street, and he turns to, I think, Manoff. Now, I just want a question answered, fellas. Are you guys trying to overthrow the government of the United States? And Manoff says, what? No, just CBS. You saw him for that? And that was the end of the politics. No one ever discussed politics again. Because we knew a lot of politics that he didn't understand. But you should have seen the show when we did the jazz show. And we had Armstrong, everybody was in it. And it was the birth of jazz, you know, and the closing up the place down in New Orleans. And quotes from the French on jazz and everything like that. Well, he had all these famous people there, and everybody on Madison Avenue was in that hall trying to see these famous people. Charlie said, I should have charged money. They're doing this all in one set. You can't believe it. In one room. It's a live show.
How long did it take how long did it take you to write a script for You Are There?
Well, it depends what the subject is. If it's a long research job before you get to it, but if it's a job that's been researched properly, like Beethoven, then it's easy, because I know the books. I go where they are.
What were some of your favorites?
What?
Segments of You Are There.
Oh, the only ones I didn't like are the ones they forced me to do, because they get stuck, you know. Walter doesn't want to do it. Arnie doesn't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Well, someone has to do it. So if it's my turn, I'm stuck with a show I have to do.
Sidney Lumet. One reading of Polonsky's work will not only tell you what we missed when this marvelous writer was caged, but also what we gained and why that time is still referred to as the golden age of Hollywood.
Yeah, well, that's because I'm a very good writer. And they're not used to having, if I have to write dialogue for Henry VII or Julius XIV, I'm able to imitate his style so it sounds like it, you know, old, like somebody wrote it like Shakespeare, so I can do that.
How do you do that? I mean, how are you able?
I do that because when I was born, the devil was at my birthing. And he said, do you want to go to heaven? You want to be famous? I said, I want to be famous. He said, all right, but I get you when it's all over. And that was the deal we made. Now, I've kept my part, and I suppose he wants to keep his.
That answers
How do
my
I
question.
know? I'm well read. We had a very good library in our house. I read all the good books, and I'm gifted. I just know how to do that. Just like I'm gifted in directing.
I didn't realize that the blacklisting started so early.
Yes, I went to
mean-
the first meeting
You were.
at Gershwin's house when everybody in town showed up, stars of all kinds and writers and so on, because they were going to protest against the blacklist. That's the Committee for the First Amendment. See, I had already met with Houston and Willie Boy. I mean, it wasn't my idea, and Phil Dunn, it was their idea. But because of my radical inclination, I managed to get involved, see. And so when they came back from Washington, which was a debacle for everybody.
Was that when Bogart and Bacall and all those
Yeah,
people
they
went
were
to
all went
testify?
out. That's the first one.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Howard Hughes offered to give them a plane. They didn't want to take it. They wanted to hire their own plane, show their independence. I said it's the wrong idea, but they did it anyhow. In any event, when that thing was going on in Washington, it was a disaster. It was a disaster for everybody, including the people who were fighting the committee, because you can't run a show like that, and you can't really take a good position surrounded by the press and all that kind of stuff. That's not the way it works. Anyhow, this great debacle aroused Harry Truman, who was carrying the war against the Soviet Union. So Harry Truman sent a general out here to see the real heads of the studios. And he called a meeting and said, the blacklist is part of the war effort to get rid of communists in our fight against communism. So it's got to be enforced. And so by the time everybody got back from Washington, they had all received telephone calls from the heads of their studios or whoever they had contracts, told them, lay off. And they laid off, including Bogart. Don't think he didn't. They all laid off. But there was always a basic group of incompetents like myself. We're not about to let anybody tell us what to do about anything. And not about our work, of course.
So there was no choice for you. There was no thought of going in front of the committee, the House Un-Americans Committee, and denying the allegations and going on about your work.
Denying truthful allegations? I was a member of the Communist Party. What, I'm going to deny it? I appear at public meetings. I represented the Communist Party when they were trying to get a radio station at the FCC. I was down there talking for them. I'm going to say I'm not a member of the Communist Party. It is true I don't believe everything they say, but that's irrelevant. So I'm a member of the Communist Party. I made a mistake. Listen, I went up to a school recently, up on top of the Mulholland there. There's a Jewish thing, and my accountant's son goes there. He said, would I come interested in the blacklist? So I go there. There's 100 kids there, and they always ask the same question. First question, were you a member of the Communist Party? I say, yes. So the next question is, why? I said, to overthrow the government by force and violence. That's why. However, it didn't work that way. They said, why? I said, it's too tough to do, so we overthrew the communist government.
So you had there was no denial on your part at all. I mean, you had no problem with that.
What's to deny?
Now, don't you find it strange
So if I was historically wrong, who wasn't?
But there are a lot of people accused, but just by their name being laid on the table.
Yes, right. There were a lot of people like that, and they were very shocked by it. But I have a rule. My rule is I don't care if you snitched once, as we say in our block. That's okay, as long as you're sorry now, like with Sterling Hayden. That's enough for me. It wasn't the end of the world, so we lost our jobs.
But you forgive that, huh?
I forgive that on the grounds there was terrible pressure on these guys. And you got to understand that. Listen, I served in the armed forces under terrible conditions. If a guy turns and runs, you don't shoot him. He's scared shitless. And that's what was true with almost of these people. They were scared to death. The U.S. government was picking on them.
But what's so amazing to me is here you had volunteered
Yeah,
for the
well,
war.
I served.
You had a law background.
Yeah.
Didn't you think this didn't anybody, this is unconstitutional? And
Yeah, well, so what? They said that, and the case go on for 40 years. Meanwhile, you're in jail. They went to jail, those who insisted.
the top 10, the Hollywood 10?
Well, some of them went to jail.
Mm-hmm.
And there were other all over. Doctors went to jail, union leaders went to jail, and so on.
Now, you weren't involved in the film The Salt of the Earth, right? The one
No,
that was
no,
filmed out in New
Paul.
Mexico?
Paul and
Birnbaum?
and the guy who directed it. I mean, yeah. And
They had a problem with that because
of course. But it was a miracle they got it made. When I saw it, I couldn't believe it. I said, what a great job, I said, considering the fact it's a difficult conditions working.
Do you think it added fuel to the fire for the House Un-Americans Committee when people actually said, yeah, I mean, yes, I'm a member, or yes, I signed a card, so that they continued on this rampage?
The rampage was dying as it continued because it cannot be maintained. You can get a few guys, a few women, and so on, but the whole world then learns to avoid it. So it goes on. After all, politics is not that definite. After all, the position I had is not a universal position. Isn't that odd? As I used to say to them, so you suffer a little bit, you'll be writing history. They say, that's no satisfaction. I said, well, if it's no satisfaction, then quit now. No one's going to kill you if you quit.
Did your law background ever come into play here?
Only in the sense that I knew that law was full of shit. No, law was very good. I had very good, Columbia was a good place to study. I had John Dewey for functionalism in law. I had Carl Llewellyn for contracts. These are great teachers, and they covered us up. I finally understood English history after studying the common law. It makes sense when you know the law, what happened. The king trying to take over the law system, which was distributed among counts, dukes, lords, things like that. And he universalized the whole legal system. Of course, that gave him power.
When somebody used a front, can you explain the use of a front person?
Yeah. Someone comes, well, the best one was when someone comes to you and says, I think it's unfair what's happening, and if you would like to use my name and I do a little writing, I do this or that, I'd be happy to let you do it. That happened to me. Some people said, I'll give you 25% of what I earn. There were deals like that.
You mean, okay, so you would write it and it would have their name on it and you would only get 25%?
They would only.
They would get 25%.
Or maybe 50%. If you had to do, you had to do it. But I was lucky. I had people I didn't have to pay. Well, we had very interesting situations. Walter Bernstein had so many fronts. He had a whole phone book of fronts because he was writing all over the place. So some Hollywood producer had an idea for a picture, and this television show with this woman's name on was so sensational. So he hired her. So she came out. She was happy to come out, accept the salary, and she worked for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then we found out this producer calls up the guy who did the television show and said, that woman can't write. Who wrote that wonderful screenplay? She says, Walter Bernstein, of course. He said, that's just his front. Then we had another one we used to have where a guy went around saying he was fronting for Bernstein or Polonsky or someone, and he wasn't. And he had his own scripts. And he said, I'm really fronting because we had a good reputation, see. Well, we found out about it. So we paid him a call. After all, I come from the East Side, Sicilian neighborhood. Di far la tua vendetta sta sicuro va stanchela, right? So, we called on him. We got all the money back. He went around and told people he wasn't, or else we were going to kill him. And we scared the shit out of him, too. But we were nice people. We did it in a genial, vindictive way.
Was it so important for you to write that you did it with no credit? Was that?
No, it was important for us to write because that's the way we earned money. I had to support our family. I had kids in private schools and stuff like that.
And you were one of the few who did well, despite the blacklist.
Well, I'm one of the ones who said he did well. Maybe others did well, but they don't say it. I did well because everybody wanted me to work for them. Because I was good. Also, I was a director. And also, I worked up in Canada, too, with Tyrone Guthrie and so on.
Don't you think that, like Sidney Lumet said he looked at a script and he said, it just nobody writes like Polonsky. I mean, there's no way anybody wrote this but A. Polonsky. Mm-hmm. And at that time, he only knew of Bernstein, I think, right? Mm-hmm. He didn't realize, and then he said it sounded like three attorneys, Bernstein, Polonsky, and Manoff. It sounded like a group of attorneys. But he knew your style. Was it, do you think it was glaringly apparent to the people in town of who wrote what?
No, but the smart ones. It was glaringly apparent that Joe Jinks or Mary Jinks did not write the screenplay. Just talking to them, you can tell.
Now, Sidney said that one of the great sadnesses of working on You Are There was the fact that he could never meet with the three of you.
Yeah. Well, he met with Walter. They were friends.
He met him socially.
Yeah.
But you never sat down with the director and had a meeting.
No.
So wasn't that difficult?
For who? For the director, maybe.
I would think for you, though, as well.
Why? Nothing's difficult for me. I wrote the screenplay. It's over.
So Charlie Russell was your liaison.
Yeah. Well, Charlie Russell is a remarkable man in a sense. He's a perfectionist in casting and in script, and he tried for the best, and he got good results. He discovered a lot of good actors who first appeared on his show, Paul Newman, people like that. He was a good caster.
Don't you think it's ironic that you were working on You Are There, which was opening up the American history books and interpreting events? I mean, here are three blacklisted writers.
What's the irony that bothers you?
Oh, it doesn't bother me. I think it's very interesting.
What's the irony?
That you have this American history, and here are three men whose...
We are being blacklisted because we understand American history. Don't you understand that?
That's my point.
So what could be more normal? I was blacklisted. I was in New York, busy working. So this guy Rosenberg, a producer, came to New York and said he wanted to do a series on the OSS. So I said, who needs it? I said, I'm making a lot of money right now. I have no room for any more. He said, but I can get your name cleared. I said, in that case, we have a deal. I'll meet you out on the coast. So I came out to the coast, and he sent my name in, and NBC said, try getting somebody else, the guy working there. So he was stymied. But the head of the studio, the secondary head of the studio, he was against the blacklist. So he called up NBC and said, let me tell you something. Excuse the language. Go fuck yourself. We'll decide who writes the scripts, not you. Of course, the blacklist was over. And that's how it was over.